Hi guys, welcome back to Deep Dive Step 1, Problem Navigation in System Design Interviews. Imagine the scenario, one given system design problem in the interview. Should you jump straight into the solution or even start drawing components already when you heard the topic? Design YouTube, design MasterCard, design Uber? Should you start talking about database, caching, API right away, or data model? I think the answer is very clear. Absolutely not. This is the biggest red flag during the design interviews because if you get this part wrong, you'll never get the right for the following steps because you will be ended in the fighting with your own thoughts about constantly checking with interviewers at a later stage. Okay, I don't have much time about this. How about we move on to that? So you'll be getting into the mess. So before designing anything, you must clarify the problem. And that's what exactly problem navigation is all about. In this session, I'll guide you through the step one using a YouTube-like system as a complicated example. For the less complicated topics, or topics with more detailed information provided to you straight away, the same approach applies. The only difference should only be the amount of time you spend on identifying the functional requirements. I have never come across a design topic where all the non-functional requirements is listed for you. But in a lot of cases, and even more and more popular, the functional requirements are listed for you there. So in this session, we'll cover how to ask the right questions, handle unfamiliar topics. I think this is super important. I think a lot of guys are asking me about this. Hey, John, what would happen? I'm not familiar with the topic. So don't panic, we can get covered. And also about make solid design assumptions to align with the interviewer. So let's get started. Um, why is problem navigation important? Many candidates fail because they rush into designing without understanding the requirements. It's the same thing, just imagine building a house without knowing the number of floors, rooms, type of house, purpose, or budget. It's like a disaster. The same applies to system design. So before you ever touch architecture or thinking about any component, you need to clarify what are we building as the functional requirements, and also what constraints do we have as the non-functional requirements. Because building something for 20 users is a whole lot different than building something for 20 million users using the system at the same time. Before we dig deep into the steps, I just want to highlight the common mistake as the question I mentioned earlier, like, hey, John, what if I'm not familiar with the topic? So that causing the problem overloading on details. For example, in the YouTube case, one big misconception is when you heard that topic, you thought, okay, I don't have deep expertise in video processing, streaming protocols. What is encoding? What is transcoding? Do I need that to be successful? But the reality is, unless you listed yourself as a top expert in the field on your CV, most of the time, or it's not required for your deep understanding about those. Even if you are applying for a senior engineer role at YouTube, if you don't have that on your CV, video processing expertise, and they still want to interview you, that means it's not mandatory for you to understand those protocols, those process. Just to be clear about that. So reality check, you don't need to know the low-level mechanics of video transcoding. You don't need to list every streaming protocols or video compression algorithm, but you do need to understand core system design trade-offs in this. Let's take some examples. For uploads, of course, videos are split into smaller chunks instead of being uploaded as a single large file. You may not be familiar with this whole process, the accurate terms for that, but you might need to think about the file size. That would be one good exploring questions. What if the file is 1 GB? If error occurs, for example, a network failures, do you start over the whole 1 GB file again? That may take a lot of time. It's overhead, bad user experience. So you might think something to resume the uploads. Probably you split it into chunks or segment, whatever you call them. Just make sure you are clear with the interviewer. You are breaking down the large file into smaller pieces. That is easier like to handle one in the case of like errors. And that improves usability, performance, reliability, and availability by reducing the impact of failure. And same thing again for streaming. You may not need to know like the different format for different devices. That's requirement for that. You may not know what exactly it's called, like the quality or bit rate or whatever, but you might need to understand in the case of like a network congestions, interviewer might prompt you about this. What would happen if you're experiencing low bandwidth or slow network? Probably you can think about like the throughput. If you are already on a constraint, you probably won't. You want to try to reduce the throughput, which means like lower the quality of the video. So something like that as a trade-off. And also important thing to note, if something is really important or critical, interviewer will sometimes provide hints, tips, or suggestions for you to consider. So in summary, the lesson here is like, don't panic if you are unfamiliar with something. Break it down into fundamental concepts. Focus on like core usability, reliability, and trade-off, not unnecessary implementation details. And then back to problem navigation. How do we approach that? And remember the goal, like you need to identify functional and non-functional requirement through clarifying questions and assumptions. So in this case, so in sake of time, I have listed the approach to go for this. Okay, where is it? Yeah, those would be like some prompting questions for you to explore in both the functional requirements section and the non-functional requirements section. Clarifying questions can be like, should users be able to upload, store, or stream videos? That would be like your assumption should support these kind of functionalities. The other approach for this is like ask directly, like YouTube is quite huge, or video sharing, like what would be the key or core functionalities should we provide to the user? So either way would work. Depends on how familiar you are with this. It can just be honest and open to ask those questions. And for the rest, I think you do expect to know about like, hey, do we handle user authentication, login user or not, or guest user, do we need subscription, something like that? Do we support like live streaming? I think even though you may not familiar with topic, but live streaming events like sports or concert is slightly different than like video upload and sharing. So just make sure like you clarify those with your interviewers, and also about other functionalities about a comment like subscribe or not. Make sure like you drill down into top like 3 to 5 core functions you need to design in the 35 to 50 minutes. And also important thing is to write down as you identify them before you navigate to the non-functional part. So for the non-functional requirements, always start like with the user base. It's about like 50 million daily active or 50 million monthly active. There will be like a difference. Define like what under what conditions should it perform well. So some key non-functional considerations about like, hey, how many users, low latency, read-write ratio, video storage should be planned for, availability for tolerance should be by default, right? And make sure like user can always access the video, can stream back. There shouldn't be like data loss. And then again, after this, write down the non-functional requirements as well. For the sake of time, I just pre-written it here so we can see here. As the last step of the problem navigation process is definitely to get agreement with your interviewer. So as I said, you should be like writing this down as you are exploring the problem. Once you think you have completed everything, spend like 10, 15 seconds to refine this with your interviewer to ask for any feedback or suggestions, anything you could have missed, and they may have like noticed. So I do believe everyone would be happy to make suggestions in case you did mix something that is important for the design. So this will also show you like you can think in a structured way, and also you are collaborating with the interviewer rather than doing like a one-man show. And also this can prevent misunderstandings in the downstream in the following steps. So I think in the problem navigation, it's quite simple and straightforward. I think the only thing I want to highlight, like I never this should be the pitfalls about like you think you need detailed information about a certain area in the system design and you get panic. So if you can avoid that, that'd be really good. Another example would be like trying to design chess or any game you're not familiar with. Doesn't matter. The only thing is you need to have like a rule engine to check how it goes. That's pretty much it. You don't know exactly that. You can say, hey, that's a rule engine service to check if it's valid, who wins, how the details rule doesn't really matter. And I don't think the interviewer cares about that. You just need to make sure like low latency, good user experience is scalable. What the checking happens, client and front end. How do you like store the scores, etc. Build the leaderboard, playing with friends, how to do the matching, that would be important. Then it's back to the general design interview questions. You don't really need to know about the details. So key takeaways here, ask clarifying questions to define scope, identify as output, identify functional and non-functional requirements, list it down because you are going to use that for the rest of the interview. Make reasonable assumptions and validate with the interviewer. You can also ask direct questions, of course. Focus on trade-off, not unnecessary details. So that's pretty much it. In the next session, we'll move into step 2, high-level design, where we'll define components, APIs, or data models even, and have a good working data flows for a YouTube-like system with the requirement we discovered in step 1 and listed on the board. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more system design deep dive. Hope that helps.